I'm Mia, 67 years old, and after 4 decades teaching elementary school in Boston, I thought I knew my son Adam better than anyone. I trusted him completely until that night I overheard him on the phone with his wife. "Yes, love, come live with us. My mother is retired and will help with our expenses," he said, thinking I was asleep. That moment changed everything. What they didn't expect was my response to their scheme. Before I tell you what happened when they saw what I had done, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button and give this video a like if you believe family should be about love, not exploitation. My story begins long before that fateful night. For 40 years, I poured my heart into teaching third graders at Lincoln Elementary in Boston. Every day brought new challenges and joys as I watched young minds blossom under my guidance. My husband George and I saved carefully throughout those years, planning for a modest but comfortable retirement in the same 3-bedroom house where we raised our son Adam. George was a postal worker, not flashy or ambitious, but reliable and loving. We were never wealthy, but we managed our finances well. We paid off our mortgage 10 years ago, a moment of tremendous pride for both of us. George would joke that our house was our greatest achievement besides Adam. If only he knew how Adam would later view that achievement. 3 years ago, George passed away suddenly from a heart attack. One minute, we were planning a trip to the Grand Canyon, something we'd always wanted to do together, and the next I was planning his funeral. The grief was overwhelming, but I tried to stay strong. Adam helped with the arrangements, seeming genuinely supportive during those dark days. I was grateful for his presence, never imagining he might have other motives. With George gone, I adjusted to life alone. My teacher's pension and Social Security combined with George's life insurance and our savings meant I was financially secure. Not wealthy by any means, but I could pay my bills and even enjoy small luxuries like my gardening hobby and occasional lunches with friends. The house that George and I had chosen together became my sanctuary filled with 4 decades of memories. Adam, now 38, had always been ambitious. Even as a child, he looked for shortcuts and easy wins. In school, he'd charm teachers rather than study hard. In college, he joined a fraternity mainly for the business connections. Now he works in commercial real estate, making good money selling office buildings and retail spaces. On the surface, he's successful with a large house in an upscale suburb and a luxury car. But I've always suspected he lives beyond his means. His wife, Jessica, 36, comes from a wealthy family and has expensive tastes. She works part-time at an art gallery more for social connections than income. Jessica has always been polite to me, but with an underlying coldness I couldn't quite place. She calls me Mother Lancaster, rather than Mom or Mia, creating distance even while appearing respectful. In retrospect, I should have recognized the warning signs. Their children, my grandchildren, are my greatest joy. Emma is 10, sensitive and artistic like her grandmother, while Lucas is 7, energetic and curious about everything. I love them fiercely and have always made myself available to help with them, perhaps too available in hindsight. Whenever Adam and Jessica needed a sitter for a business dinner or weekend getaway, I was their first call. I never minded treasuring the time with Emma and Lucas, but I noticed they rarely checked if it was convenient for me. They simply expected my availability. Over the years, a pattern emerged. Adam would call with increasing frequency, asking for favors. Could I watch the kids for the weekend? Could I help with school pickup for a month while Jessica worked on a gallery opening? Could I loan him $5,000 for an investment opportunity that was guaranteed to pay off? I always said yes, partly from love, partly from a desire to be needed. The financial requests became more frequent after George died. Adam would casually mention a temporary cash flow issue or an unexpected expense. I'd offer help before he even asked, directly writing checks that were supposed to be loans but were never repaid. Jessica would send perfunctory thank you notes on expensive stationery, but never mentioned repayment. Despite these warning signs, I continued helping them mainly because of Emma and Lucas. I didn't want my grandchildren to suffer because of their parents' financial mismanagement. Plus, after George died, their family became my main social connection. I feared that if I stopped being useful, I'd see them less often. How painfully prophetic that fear turned out to be. In the months before the incident, Adam's visits increased noticeably. He'd stop by unannounced, bringing coffee and asking detailed questions about my retirement accounts, my will, and the house. At the time, I interpreted this as concern for my well-being. I even felt touched that he wanted to ensure I was financially secure. How naive I was. Jessica began calling more regularly, too, inviting me to family dinners and asking my advice about the children's education. She even suggested I might want to downsize someday, mentioning that managing a house at my age must be difficult. I assured her I was managing fine, but the seed had been planted. Looking back, their increased attention was clearly part of a calculated plan. They weren't reconnecting with me out of love or concern. They were laying groundwork, assessing my assets, determining my usefulness, and ultimately planning to exploit me in ways I never imagined my own son capable of. The evening it all came to light started innocently enough. Adam had invited me to dinner at their house, something that had become more common lately. Jessica prepared her specialty beef Wellington and even bought my favorite wine. The children were especially affectionate with Emma showing me her latest art project, and Lucas insisting I read him 3 bedtime stories instead of the usual one. After the children were asleep, Adam poured me another glass of wine, something he rarely did as he knew I wasn't a big drinker. "Mom, have you been sleeping okay lately? You look tired," he said, his voice full of apparent concern. "I'm fine," I replied. "Just the usual senior moments of waking up at odd hours. You know, Dr. Phillips gave me these sleeping pills when I was having trouble last year," Adam said, producing a small pill bottle from his pocket. "They're very mild, just help you stay asleep through the night. Why don't you try one tonight?" The suggestion seemed strange, as Adam had never shared medication with me before, but his expression was so earnest, so concerned, that I agreed to take one. "I'll just put it in my purse for later," I said. "No, Mom, take it now, so it has time to work. You're staying in the guest room tonight, remember? It's too late for you to drive home." Adam's insistence made me uncomfortable, but I didn't want to seem ungrateful for his concern. I pretended to put the pill in my mouth, then sipped the water he offered. When he turned away, I quietly slipped the pill into my pocket. Something felt wrong, and my teacher's instinct for detecting deception was on high alert. After saying goodnight, I went to the guest room and turned off the light, but remained fully dressed and alert. My heart was pounding with an inexplicable sense of dread. About 20 minutes later, I heard Adam and Jessica speaking in hushed tones in the hallway. I crept to the door and pressed my ear against it. "Did she take the pill?" Jessica's voice was barely above a whisper. "Yes, she'll be out cold soon. These are stronger than what I told her," Adam replied. The casual way he admitted to essentially drugging me sent chills down my spine. "Good. We need to finalize everything. The moving company is booked for Monday," Jessica said. "Moving company?" My confusion deepened as I continued listening. "I still think we should have discussed this with her first," Adam said, showing a flicker of conscience that gave me momentary hope. Jessica's response crushed that hope immediately. "And have her refuse? No way. This is better. We tell her it's for her own good that we're worried about her living alone. By the time she realizes what's happening, her house will be on the market." Their footsteps moved away from the guest room door. I waited a few moments, then silently opened it a crack. I could see them sitting at the kitchen island, papers spread before them, speaking more freely now that they thought I was unconscious. "The real estate agent says we can list her house for $400,000 minimum," Adam was saying, studying what looked like property listings. "Once we pay off her small equity line, we'll clear at least $350,000. "And she'll sign it over because," Jessica prompted. "Because I'm her son, and she trusts me," Adam replied with a confidence that broke my heart. "I've got power of attorney paperwork ready. I'll tell her it's just in case something happens to her. She'll sign it. What about her pension and Social Security? Jessica asked, calculator in hand. Direct deposit into a joint account I'll set up for managing her finances while she helps with the kids and the house, Adam explained. Between that and selling her house, we can finally pay off our credit cards and maybe even buy that vacation property in Vermont. And she'll be available for the kids whenever we need, Jessica added. No more paying for after-school care or summer camps. Plus, she can cook and clean while I'm at the gallery. She'll think she's helping family, Adam said with a laugh that sounded nothing like my son. She's always going on about family being everything. Well, now she can really contribute to ours. What if she catches on? Jessica asked, voicing the concern that should have been paramount. Adam's response revealed how little he truly knew me. Mom's lonely since Dad died. She's desperate for company. She'll be grateful to be needed. Plus, once we sell her house, where else would she go? I stood frozen behind that door, tears streaming silently down my face. This was my son, my only child. The person I'd read bedtime stories to, nursed through chickenpox, cheered at graduation. Now he was planning to essentially steal my home, appropriate my income, and turn me into an unpaid servant for his family. The betrayal cut so deep I could barely breathe. As their conversation continued detailing more aspects of their plan, a strange calm settled over me. The initial shock and heartbreak began transforming into something else: determination. They thought I was a helpless old woman they could manipulate and use. I decided in that moment to show them exactly how wrong they were. I returned to the guest bed, silently mind-racing with what I'd discovered. I wouldn't confront them immediately. No, that would give them time to create a new plan. Instead, I would let them believe their scheme was working while I prepared my response. As the first light of dawn crept through the window, I had already begun formulating my plan. The next 5 days were a carefully orchestrated dance of deception from both sides. Adam was suddenly too busy to take my calls or would answer briefly, making excuses about work emergencies. When we did speak, he avoided eye contact, a telltale sign of his guilt that he'd displayed since childhood, whenever he'd broken a vase or taken money from my purse. On that first day after the dinner, I called my best friend Barbara, a fellow retired teacher who had become my rock since George's passing. We met at a coffee shop far from my neighborhood to avoid any chance encounters with Adam or his friends. They're planning to do what? Barbara's voice rose in indignation as I explained what I'd overheard. They want to move me into their house, sell my home, and use me as free childcare and household help. I repeated, still struggling to believe it myself. Barbara's eyes narrowed. And they think you'll just go along with this? They plan to drug me, present it as a fait accompli, and manipulate me into thinking it was for my own good, I explained. They don't believe I have the strength to refuse. Those entitled little... Barbara stopped herself, remembering we were in public. What are you going to do, Mia? I leaned forward. I'm going to teach them a lesson they'll never forget, but I need your help. By the end of our coffee meeting, the outlines of my plan were taking shape. Barbara agreed to make some calls to our network of retired teachers, setting things in motion while I maintained the facade of ignorance with Adam and Jessica. On the second day, I visited my lawyer, Frank Donovan, who had helped with George's estate. I explained the situation and what I wanted to do. Frank was properly outraged on my behalf. First things first, he said. Let's make sure they can't touch your assets. We spent 2 hours securing my accounts, ensuring Adam couldn't access them even with manipulation tactics. I signed a new power of attorney naming Barbara as my representative in case of incapacitation, revoking the outdated one that had named Adam. What about the house? Frank asked. That's part of my plan, I replied with a smile that seemed to surprise him. He was used to seeing me as the grieving widow, not as the strategic thinker emerging from this betrayal. That afternoon, Adam happened to stop by my house. I pretended not to notice him surreptitiously measuring furniture and wall spaces, presumably to determine what would fit in their guest room. When he casually asked if I'd been sleeping better, implying the effectiveness of the pill I'd supposedly taken, I played along. Like a baby, I lied. I didn't hear a thing all night. He smiled, satisfied with his deception. That's great, Mom. Maybe you should keep taking them. Maybe I will, I responded, thinking how he had no idea I was fully aware during his midnight planning session. The third day brought another casual visit from Adam, this time with pointed questions about my finances. Mom, I was thinking, he began, attempting nonchalance. Do you have your house deeds somewhere safe? And what about your retirement account information? It might be good for me to have copies, just in case. Everything's with my lawyer, I replied truthfully. But why the sudden interest? Just being responsible, he said quickly. Dad always handled that stuff, and now that he's gone, I should step up. It was all I could do not to call out his lies right there, but patience was essential to my plan. Meanwhile, Barbara had been extraordinarily busy on my behalf, making calls and arrangements that would come to fruition on Monday. The fourth day was perhaps the hardest. I watched Adam walking through my garden, eyeing it not with appreciation for the roses I'd tenderly cultivated, but as square footage that could be converted to cash. He mentioned that his friend's real estate company was doing really well and asked if I'd ever considered cashing out of my house, now that property values are so high. I mumbled something non-committal while inwardly reconfirming my resolve. That afternoon, when Adam left, Barbara arrived with 3 other retired teachers, Judith, Eleanor, and Patricia. All had been colleagues at Lincoln Elementary, all had known me for decades, and all were furious on my behalf. The nerve of that boy, Judith said, shaking her head. After everything you did for him. Well, he's about to learn that retired teachers are a force to be reckoned with, Eleanor added with determination. We spent hours transforming my house according to my plan. The women brought supplies, made phone calls, and helped rearrange furniture. By evening, phase 1 of the transformation was complete. When Adam called to check if I'd be home the next day, I assured him I would be giving no indication that anything had changed. That night, the final night before my confrontation with Adam and Jessica, I walked through my house alone. In each room, memories of George flooded back, along with memories of Adam growing up. The hallway where we'd marked his height each birthday. The kitchen where I'd taught him to make pancakes. The backyard where he'd practiced baseball with George. For the first time since overhearing their plan, I allowed myself to really feel the pain of betrayal. I sat on the edge of my bed and wept, not just for the scheme they'd devised, but for the relationship I thought we had. Had I somehow failed as a mother? Had I raised a son who valued money over family convenience, over compassion? The questions haunted me throughout the sleepless night. By morning, my resolve had hardened. The tears were gone, replaced by determination. I wasn't just protecting my assets and independence. I was standing up for my worth as a person, as a mother, as a grandmother. If Adam and Jessica saw me only as a resource to be exploited, they needed a serious reality check. The final day of preparation passed in a blur of activity. More retired teachers arrived, bringing additional supplies and helping with final arrangements. Barbara coordinated everything with military precision, her administrative skills honed by years as department head serving us well. By Sunday night, everything was ready. I called Adam to confirm he'd be picking me up the next morning. 9 o'clock, Mom, he said, a note of barely concealed excitement in his voice. Pack light, just essentials. We can always come back for anything you need later. I'm sure he thought that meant after the house was sold. Little did he know what coming back would actually entail. I'll be ready, I promised, and for the first time in days, I was telling him the absolute truth. Monday morning arrived bright and clear, a perfect late spring day that seemed at odds with the emotional storm I was about to unleash. I dressed carefully in my most professional outfit, a navy blue suit I'd worn to parent-teacher conferences, and packed a small overnight bag as instructed. Then I sat in my living room, waited, and rehearsed what I would say when the moment came. At precisely 9 o'clock, a moving truck pulled up outside my house, followed by Adam's SUV. My heart hammered in my chest as I watched through the window. Adam emerged from the driver's side, looking nervously at his watch. Jessica stepped out from the passenger side, immaculately dressed as always, her face a mask of forced cheerfulness. To my surprise, Emma and Lucas tumbled out from the back seat, using the children as emotional leverage. Another low tactic I hadn't anticipated. I took a deep breath and opened the front door before they could ring the bell. "Good morning," I said pleasantly. "Grandma." Emma and Lucas rushed forward to hug me. Their affection at least was genuine, and I hugged them back fiercely. "Mom," Adam's voice was overly bright. "Are you ready for your big day?" "Big day?" I asked innocently. Adam put his arm around my shoulder. "Moving in with us. We've been planning this surprise for weeks. You're always saying how lonely you are in this big house, and we have that perfect guest suite that's just sitting empty." Jessica stepped forward with a rehearsed smile. "We thought, why not have you come stay with us? The children miss you terribly, and it would be so much easier than you living alone." "That's so thoughtful," I replied, noticing how they framed it entirely as a favor to me, not mentioning any of the benefits they expected to receive. "The movers will pack everything important," Adam continued, gesturing to the two men waiting by the truck. "And we can sell this place without you having to deal with any of the hassle." "Sell my house?" I feigned surprise. "Well, you won't need it anymore," Jessica said quickly. "And the market is excellent right now." "I see." I nodded slowly. "Well, let me just get my purse and finish getting ready." "Take your time," Adam said, checking his watch again. "But the movers charge by the hour, so—" I went back inside, leaving them on the porch. I could hear Adam instructing the movers to start with the bedroom furniture and anything that looked valuable. I took my time in the bathroom, applying lipstick with deliberate slowness, watching the minutes tick by. Let them wait. Let them wonder why I was taking so long. Small acts of resistance before the big reveal. When I finally emerged, Adam was pacing the porch anxiously. "Mom, we should really get going. Traffic will be terrible if we wait much longer." "Of course, dear," I said, locking my front door carefully. "But I need to stop by my house before we go to yours." Adam looked confused. "Mom, we are at your house." "Oh, I meant the other one," I said, vaguely enjoying his bewilderment. The drive was tense, with Adam constantly glancing at me in the rearview mirror. I sat in the back with the children, who were excited about Grandma coming to live with us forever, clearly repeating phrases they'd been fed. Jessica attempted small talk about how wonderful it would be to have me around all the time, especially to help with homework and dinner prep. I noticed she never once mentioned how I might spend my leisure time or maintain my independence. As we approached my neighborhood again, having circled around per my directions, Adam's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "Mom, where exactly are we going?" "Just up ahead," I said calmly. "You can park right out front." When we turned onto my street, Adam's confusion visibly deepened. There were several cars parked outside my house, and a new sign had been erected in the front yard, though from this distance he couldn't read it yet. "Mom, why are there cars at your house? Did you plan some kind of goodbye party?" Adam's voice held a note of panic now. "Something like that," I replied enigmatically. As we pulled up to the curb, the full scene came into view. My modest front yard had been transformed. Colorful playground equipment now dotted the previously open space. A large, professionally printed banner hung above the front door reading, "Mia's Golden Years Childcare Center." Through the front windows, the outlines of small tables and chairs could be seen where my living room furniture had been. Adam slammed on the brakes so hard we all jerked forward. "What the hell?" he exclaimed, forgetting the presence of his children. "Language, dear," I reminded him mildly, unbuckling my seatbelt. Emma Lucas, why don't you go see the new playground? Miss Barbara is waiting for you. Sure enough, Barbara stood by the front gate waving cheerfully. The children, oblivious to the adult tension, scrambled out of the car and ran toward the playground. Mom, what is going on? Adam demanded as we all got out of the car. Jessica stood frozen, staring at the sign in disbelief. I think that's my line, Adam, I said, my voice suddenly steel. What's going on is that I heard every word of your conversation with Jessica the other night. Every single word. The blood drained from Adam's face. I don't know what you're talking about. Really, let me refresh your memory. Yes, love, come live with us. My mother is retired and will help with our expenses. Ring any bells? Or how about discussing selling my house for $350,000 to pay off your credit cards? Or maybe the part about taking my pension and Social Security? Jessica took a step backward. Adam, she knows. Of course I know, I said, turning to face her. Did you really think I'd take sleeping pills from someone who's never shared so much as an aspirin with me before I wasn't born yesterday, though clearly you both think I'm senile enough to be manipulated? Adam's face cycled through shock, embarrassment, and then attempted recovery. Mom, you misunderstood. We were just trying to help you. Living alone at your age isn't safe. Save it, Adam. I cut him off. I heard you laughing about how desperate and lonely I must be, about how grateful I'd be for the opportunity to cook, clean, and provide free childcare while you spent my retirement funds. By now, several of my teacher friends had emerged from the house, standing in solidarity behind me. The moving men, sensing a family dispute, awkwardly remained by their truck, uncertain what to do. What is all this? Jessica gestured wildly at the transformed house. This, I said with pride, is my response to your scheme. Since you value me primarily as a childcare provider, I decided to become one professionally. Mia's Golden Years Childcare Center is now officially in business, properly licensed, and already with a waiting list of clients. You can't do this, Adam sputtered. This is a residential neighborhood. Actually, I can, I countered. I checked the zoning laws. Small businesses are permitted with proper licensing, which I obtained last week. Several of my fellow retired teachers have joined me as partners. We're focusing on reading readiness and early mathematics, drawing on our decades of classroom experience. But what about moving in with us? Adam was floundering now, his carefully constructed plan disintegrating before his eyes. That offer expired the moment I heard you planning to drug me and steal my assets, I replied coldly. I've changed my power of attorney to name Barbara, not you. I've secured my accounts so you can't access them even if you somehow convinced me to sign something. And this house will never be for sale as long as I live. Jessica grabbed Adam's arm. Let's go. This is humiliating. She glanced around nervously, noticing neighbors beginning to gather, attracted by the commotion. Not yet, I said firmly. First, I want to make something absolutely clear. I am not a resource to be exploited. I am not desperate or lonely or easily manipulated. I am your mother, Adam, not your servant or your cash cow. Tears filled my eyes despite my determination to remain composed. I changed your diapers. I held your hand on the first day of school. I worked 2 jobs to help pay for your college when your scholarships weren't enough. I loved you unconditionally and would have given you anything if you just asked honestly instead of plotting behind my back. Adam at least had the decency to look ashamed. Mom, I'm sorry. We got carried away. We do want you with us. No, you want what I can give you. There's a difference. I corrected him. And now you can explain to Emma and Lucas why Grandma won't be living with you after all. I suggest you come up with something better than the truth, because I'd hate for them to know their father was willing to steal from his own mother. The children were happily playing on the new swings, blissfully unaware of the adult drama unfolding. Adam looked at them, then back at me, his face crumpling slightly. What do we do now? he asked suddenly, sounding like the little boy who would come to me when he'd made a mistake. You go home, I said firmly. You figure out how to fix your financial problems without using me. And maybe when you've done some serious reflection on your values and what you're teaching your children, we can talk about rebuilding our relationship. Jessica was already walking toward the children, calling them to return to the car. They protested, wanting to stay and play. You can visit Grandma another day, she said tensely, ushering them back to the SUV despite their complaints. Adam stood awkwardly for a moment longer. Mom, this isn't over. We need to talk about this more. You're right, it isn't over, I agreed. But the conversation will happen on my terms now, not yours. Goodbye, Adam. I turned and walked through the gate of my transformed home, my teacher friends closing ranks behind me. The last thing I saw before entering was Adam's defeated posture as he trudged back to his car, the moving truck pulling away empty behind him. I had won this battle, but the war for our family's future was just beginning. The immediate aftermath of that Monday morning confrontation was both vindicating and heartbreaking. As Adam and Jessica's car disappeared down the street, I experienced a complex mix of emotions, pride in standing up for myself, relief that my plan had worked, but also profound sadness that our relationship had deteriorated to this point. Barbara hugged me tightly as we watched them leave. You did it, Mia. You showed them they can't take advantage of you. Yes, I said quietly. But at what cost? The question lingered as we returned inside to my transformed home. The living room and dining room had been converted into cheerful learning spaces with small tables, educational toys, and bookshelves. My personal belongings had been carefully moved to the master bedroom and den, which remained private spaces. The transformation was impressive, accomplished in just a few days through the determination of my teacher network. Judith approached with a cup of tea. Are you really okay, Mia? That couldn't have been easy. It wasn't, I admitted, taking the cup gratefully. But neither is being seen as nothing more than a convenience by your only child. We spent that first day finalizing preparations for the actual opening of the daycare the following week. While the confrontation with Adam had been the catalyst for this transformation, I was genuinely committed to making the business succeed. The licensing paperwork had been rushed through thanks to Patricia's connection at the city office, and we already had 5 families signed up with more expressing interest. That evening, after everyone had left, I sat alone in my den surrounded by family photos. I picked up one of Adam at his college graduation, his face beaming with pride and possibility. Where had that hopeful young man gone? When had he become someone who would scheme to take advantage of his own mother? The questions haunted me as I prepared for bed, in a house that felt simultaneously more purposeful and more empty than before. The first week without contact from Adam was the hardest. Each time my phone rang, I hoped it might be him calling to apologize sincerely, not just the perfunctory sorry he'd offered when caught. Instead, there were calls from interested parents, from my teacher friends, coordinating schedules, from Barbara checking on my emotional state. But nothing from my son. I tried calling Emma and Lucas on Wednesday, hoping to maintain my relationship with my grandchildren despite the conflict with their parents. Jessica answered and curtly informed me that the children were too busy to speak with me. When I called again on Friday, no one answered at all. My text messages to Emma's supervised phone went unread. It became clear that Adam and Jessica were using the children as emotional leverage, a particularly cruel tactic that revealed just how little they understood about healthy family dynamics. The daycare opened the following Monday with 5 children ages 3 to 5. Barbara, Judith, Eleanor, and I each took specific responsibilities based on our teaching strengths. I handled the reading readiness program using techniques I'd refined over 40 years in the classroom. The children responded wonderfully, and for hours at a time, I was able to lose myself in the joy of teaching again, temporarily forgetting the family crisis unfolding in the background. Parents picking up their children often commented on how unusual and wonderful it was to have experienced teachers providing daycare. My son learned more from you in one day than in a week at his previous place. One mother told me, reinforcing that this new chapter might have value beyond just thwarting Adam's scheme. By the end of the second week, word had spread through the neighborhood and beyond. We had inquiries from 10 more families and realized we would need to hire additional help to maintain our quality standards if we accepted them all. It was a good problem to have, but the business success felt hollow without reconciliation with my family. The community response to our venture was overwhelmingly positive. Local news even did a small feature on retired teachers finding new purpose, which brought more attention and inquiries. Several neighbors who had witnessed the confrontation with Adam stopped by to express support, some sharing their own stories of family conflicts over elder care and inheritance. I was surprised to discover how common such situations were. My daughter tried something similar. My neighbor Helen confided over coffee, suggested I couldn't manage my finances anymore, and offered to help. Turned out she wanted to access my savings for her husband's failing business. Standing your ground was the right thing to do, Mia. Such conversations provided comfort, but they couldn't fill the growing void left by Adam's absence. Each night, I found myself looking at photos of Emma and Lucas, wondering what they'd been told, whether they thought I'd abandoned them by not moving in as promised. The thought that they might believe I didn't want to be with them was almost unbearable. At Barbara's insistence, I began seeing a therapist who specialized in family estrangement. Dr. Rivera helped me understand that what Adam had attempted was a form of elder abuse, and that my response, while perhaps dramatic, was ultimately an act of healthy self-preservation. "You didn't create this situation," she reminded me during our third session. "You merely responded to it with strength instead of submission. The ball is in Adam's court now." Financially, the daycare was already proving profitable beyond our initial projections. By the 1-month mark, we had 12 children enrolled full-time and a waiting list for fall openings. My teacher's pension, combined with the business income, meant I was more financially secure than ever, an ironic contrast to what Adam had planned for me. I set aside a portion of the profits for Emma and Lucas's college funds, determined to maintain my commitment to their futures, even if their parents were currently keeping them from me. I also began writing them weekly letters, knowing they might not receive them now, but hoping someday they would understand my side of the story. As successful as the business aspect was, the personal toll continued to mount. Birthdays and family gatherings that would normally bring us together passed without acknowledgement. I sent cards and gifts to the children that received no response. The silence was deafening, a continuous reminder of what had been lost. "You need to give it time," Barbara advised when she found me crying over Lucas's unacknowledged birthday gift. "They're licking their wounds. Their plan failed spectacularly, and their pride is hurt. Eventually they'll realize what they're losing by keeping this up." I hoped she was right, but as weeks turned into a month with no contact, I began to wonder if our family could ever heal from this breach. Had I gone too far with my response? Should I have confronted them more privately, without the public humiliation? The questions plagued me even as I knew I'd done what was necessary to protect myself. The 1-month assessment of my new situation was mixed financial success and new purpose on one side, emotional struggle and family fracture on the other. But through it all, I maintained my determination not to be victimized or manipulated. If reconciliation came, it would be on terms of mutual respect, not exploitation. On the morning marking exactly 1 month since the confrontation, I was reading to a group of 4-year-olds when Barbara interrupted with an urgent whisper. "Mia Jessica is here, with the children." My heart leaped as I excused myself and hurried to the entrance. There they stood, Emma and Lucas, looking slightly nervous but excited, and Jessica, her usual polished appearance, somewhat dimmed her expression, a complex mix of embarrassment and resignation. The road to healing was about to begin, though none of us yet knew what form it would take. 3 months after that fateful Monday when my world turned upside down, Mia's Golden Years Childcare Center had become an unexpected success story in our community. What began as a defensive maneuver had blossomed into a thriving business with a waiting list that stretched into the following year. We now employed 3 additional retired teachers and had expanded our program to include before and after school care for elementary students. The physical transformation of my home was complete. The front yard featured a professionally designed playground. The living areas were bright educational spaces, and I had renovated the basement into a comfortable apartment for myself, maintaining my privacy while maximizing the business space. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had indeed downsized, as Jessica had suggested, but on my own terms and to my own benefit. More importantly, the emotional landscape had begun to shift. That unexpected visit from Jessica and the children 1 month after the confrontation had been the first tentative step toward healing. She had stood awkwardly on my doorstep, designer purse clutched tightly as if for protection. "The children miss you," she'd said simply. "They don't understand why they can't see Grandma anymore." It wasn't an apology, but it was an opening, and I seized it gratefully. Emma and Lucas had rushed into my arms full of stories about school and friends, seemingly unaware of the adult conflict that had separated us. Jessica had remained stiff and formal, but had agreed to a regular visitation schedule for the children. Adam had taken longer to come around. 2 months after the confrontation, he'd finally called, his voice tight with suppressed emotion. "The house looks good," he'd said awkwardly. "I drove by yesterday." "The children seemed to enjoy the playground," I'd replied, equally awkward. "Mom, he'd started, then paused. "Jessica told me I need to talk to you. She says the kids are asking questions I can't answer." It wasn't the heartfelt apology I'd hoped for, but it was something. We'd agreed to meet for coffee at a neutral location, a small cafe halfway between our homes. The conversation had been difficult, full of starts and stops, accusations and defenses. But beneath it all was a fundamental truth. We were still family, connected by bonds that even this betrayal couldn't fully sever. I was wrong. Adam had finally admitted, staring into his coffee cup rather than meeting my eyes. "We were wrong. The way we went about it was inexcusable." Yes, it was. I'd agreed, not making it easier for him. He needed to fully own his actions. "We were in financial trouble," he'd continued. "Deeper than you knew. Jessica's spending my bad investments, the mortgage on a house we couldn't really afford. We panicked. And your solution was to exploit me rather than ask for help honestly." The hurt was still raw in my voice. Adam had winced. "It sounds horrible when you put it like that." "Because it was horrible, Adam. I'm your mother, not a resource to be manipulated." That conversation hadn't resolved everything, but it had broken the silence. We'd agreed to family therapy, a suggestion from Dr. Rivera that I'd initially been skeptical about, but now embraced as our best hope for rebuilding trust. The therapy sessions revealed deeper issues in Adam's behavior patterns. With the gentle but firm guidance of Dr. Patel, our family therapist, Adam began to recognize how his lifelong tendency to look for easy solutions and shortcuts had culminated in the scheme to exploit me. Jessica, to my surprise, engaged honestly in the process, acknowledging her materialism and admitting that her own parents' conditional love had warped her perspective on family relationships. "I thought that's just how families worked," she'd confessed during our 4th session. "My parents always expected something in return for their support. Love was transactional in our house." Understanding the roots of their behavior didn't excuse it, but it helped me contextualize their actions and begin the process of forgiveness. More importantly, it helped them recognize the toxic patterns they were at risk of passing on to Emma and Lucas. By the 3-month mark, we had established a new rhythm. The children visited me twice weekly after school, genuinely enjoying the daycare environment and often helping with the younger children. Adam and Jessica came for Sunday dinner every other week, still somewhat tense affairs, but gradually warming. Financial boundaries remained firm. I had made it clear that I would not bail them out of their money troubles, but I did connect Adam with Frank, my lawyer, who helped them create a realistic debt management plan. Jessica took on additional hours at the gallery and scaled back her luxury purchases. They put their oversized house on the market and were looking at more modest homes that wouldn't strain their budget. 1 year after the confrontation, the transformation was remarkable. The daycare had become so successful that we'd purchased the house next door to expand, creating a proper small campus with dedicated spaces for different age groups. I'd moved into a comfortable owner's apartment in the new building, maintaining my independence while staying connected to the business. Adam and Jessica had downsized to a sensible 3-bedroom house in a good school district, significantly reducing their financial stress. They were still working through their debt, but with a clear plan and new priorities. Most importantly, they had begun to develop a healthier relationship with money and status, focusing more on experiences with their children than on maintaining appearances. Our family relationship had evolved into something I never expected: a partnership of equals, rather than the parent-child dynamic that had defined our interactions for so long. Adam still sometimes slipped into old patterns looking for the easy way out of problems, but he caught himself more quickly. Jessica and I had developed a tentative friendship based on mutual respect rather than the cold formality of our previous relationship. Emma and Lucas thrived in this new environment, spending time at the daycare after school and developing close relationships with the other teachers who became like extended family. They witnessed daily examples of older adults living purposeful, independent lives, counteracting the stereotype of seniors as dependent or diminished that their parents had unconsciously perpetuated. On the anniversary of that Monday morning confrontation, we held a small celebration at the daycare, marking both the business milestone and our family's healing journey. As I looked around at the children playing at my teacher friends, who had become business partners at Adam and Jessica, participating comfortably in the gathering, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the painful catalyst that had ultimately led to this transformation. "You know," Barbara said, joining me as I watched the scene, "when you told me what Adam was planning a year ago, I never imagined we'd end up here. I thought best case you'd protect yourself but lose your family in the process." "So did I admitted. I was prepared for that sacrifice if necessary. Standing up for myself seemed worth any cost. And instead, you gained a business, kept your family, and taught Adam one of the most important lessons of his life," she observed. "Which is that his mother is a force to be reckoned with?" Barbara laughed. "And that true family support isn't about exploitation, it's about helping each person be their best self." As the sun set on that anniversary evening, Adam approached me with a small gift box. "1 year," he said simply. Inside was a delicate silver pendant with 2 intertwined circles. "It's a reminder," he explained, "that family connections should strengthen both people, not drain one to feed the other." I hugged him, feeling the genuine warmth in his embrace that had been absent for so long. "I'm proud of how far you've come," I told him truthfully. "I had a good teacher," he replied. "Several, actually." He gestured around at the daycare that had been born from his betrayal. Later, after everyone had gone and I sat alone in my new apartment, I reflected on the journey of the past year. From the shock of betrayal to the triumph of reinvention, from family fracture to thoughtful reconciliation, it had been a path I never expected to walk in my 60s. The lesson I learned, the one I hope to pass on to others facing similar challenges, is that our worth doesn't diminish with age. We don't become less deserving of respect or more suitable for exploitation as our hair grays. If anything, our lifetime of experience equips us to recognize manipulation and stand against it, to reinvent ourselves when necessary. and to teach the most powerful lessons through our actions rather than our words. So if you're watching this and wondering if you're too old to stand up for yourself, to start something new, to demand the respect you deserve, remember my story. Remember that the most important classroom is the one where we teach others how to treat us. And that lesson can begin at any age. If you've enjoyed this story or found it meaningful, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of reinvention and standing up for yourself. Share in the comments if you've ever had to take a dramatic stand to protect your dignity or independence. Have you ever had to teach a loved one a difficult lesson about respect? I'd love to hear your experiences. Thank you for listening, and remember, family should lift you up, not use you up. Until next time.